Jason and I got married in 2004, and Jason started grad school in fall of last year. It was a really, really busy season. We were just both going so many different directions, and yet it was probably the richest season our marriage has ever had. I was actually Googling movies for our date that night, and an officer called and told me I needed to immediately come to a hospital. They were telling me things like, "We're gonna do everything we can, ma'am." And I couldn't believe that I was hearing those words. I still wondered if they had the right guy. I just thought, I'm gonna get to the hospital, I'm gonna find out that there's been a mistake made. Nothing could have actually prepared me for what I saw when I walked in that room. As I crossed that threshold, Jason's heart rate monitor would flash a big red 0. And he would end up, throughout that night, he would end up flatlining and coding about 12 more times. Nothing could prepare me to hear things like code blue, clear. And again, doctors and nurses throughout the night kept on saying, "Ma'am, we're gonna do everything we can." I saw them starting to discuss things amongst themselves and with my mom and other people in the hall. They didn't know if he could hear us. They didn't know if he was there. Jason's life verse is Zephaniah 3:17, and it says that the Lord quiets us with his love and rejoices over us with singing. And so I would ask people to join me and sing over him, and we were singing songs that didn't really seem to fit the situation, and yet they did at the same time, because they were songs declaring God's goodness. And I wanted Jason to hear that. I knew he needed to hear my voice declaring that God was good and declaring that we would continue worshiping him and praising him even in a situation that absolutely defied that idea. They pulled me aside and they said, "Honey, they've done everything they can do." They had told me in no uncertain terms that on that morning I would become a widow. And as I was in the waiting room, we prayed fiercely for God's kindness. And what was very unexpected was that I felt his kindness. In that moment, I realized that not only would I not hate God, but that it's actually that my heart was able to still hope in him in that moment. Not to hope so much in the circumstances, because those were so dire, but there was still hope in him. There was still confidence in him. It brought hope into an entirely new picture, and it brought the idea of just who he is and his goodness into an entirely new light, because in the most ungood circumstance, he was still so good. All night long, I hoped for really specific things to happen medically. And all night long, those hopes were not coming true. Maybe what surprised me most is that as all of my other hopes were dying, literally, the hope that we found in that room, in the most unexpected of places where hope is the last thing somebody would expect to find, we found hope in who God is. We found hope in God's kindness. It's about an hour after we had left Jason's room that the doctor came into the room, and I looked up into his face, and he shocked me because the words that came out of his mouth were, "Brooke, I can't explain it. Jason's awake and he's responsive, and you need to come see him." And immediately the nurses grabbed my hand and ran me down that hallway. And just the whole time we're saying, "It's a miracle. We don't know what's happening. This is unbelievable. This is such a miracle."
The first thoughts are really surreal. I'm a 39-year-old guy playing basketball. The last thing I remember, that can't be me. And then you start processing from there, like, oh, okay, this is big, and this is potentially life-changing.
I think in that moment, I felt a tiny glimpse of what it had to feel like outside of Jesus' tomb, because it's a completely new story taking place than the one that you've now prepared for. And friends were running into the room and asking me, saying, "I thought he was gone, and now I've heard he's awake." And all I could say was yes to both. Yeah, he was gone, and now he's back. We were all of a sudden celebrating and had something to fight for that just hours before we'd been told was over.
God was good before, he was good during, he's good now, and there's an actual through line. I can see that through line. This really is, in many ways, Volume 2, Chapter 1. I feel like my life has been lived, and now I'm in some ways being given a second life to live and to think through and to use and engage, which I'm thankful for, and that cuts fear down significantly. If the worst that can happen to me is death, well, that already happened. So now it's taking literally each minute that he gives, being thankful for it and trying to use it for things that matter. It feels like here's one moment that he popped up and said, let me show you that I'm truly powerful over life itself. Here's, for whatever reason, your story is a story I'm going to put that exclamation point on, but it's really telling the much larger story, which is I am who I say I am. I will do what I say I will do, well beyond this physical thing.
Which is Christmas. That's Christmas. That God doing the absolute unexpected, the absolute impossible, and actually infusing hope into a world by doing something that couldn't even be imagined and that couldn't even be thought of, and once and for all declaring himself to be the God of the impossible and the God of the unimaginable.